Hey, y'all, welcome to another great episode of Unapologetic with your host, Vincent Balducci. As always, the views and opinions expressed here on Unapologetic are our own and just our own. They do not represent the views and opinions of any other person or group. With that being said, do y'all like statues? And I'm sure y'all do. If so, consider hitting that stars button down below because stars help us put up more statues. So today will be a nice little fun episode. I have some free time in my hands, so we're going to be doing these frequent, fun little live videos. We can do some Q&As. Y'all can ask us some questions here at Mad. I'll see if I can answer, and we'll just have a really good time because we need more videos like this, more just regular chat shows, chill out times. And I do know that soon we are going to be able to start uploading as well to YouTube at the same time. So while we're streaming on here, the video will also be on YouTube, and that will help further grow our community. And today's episode, I don't know who will be joining us tonight. I do have a speaker hopefully planned for Saturday, if not maybe Friday, who is a nurse, and she is she'll be a fantastic guest. I also have Nikki, who hopefully will be coming on as well soon, within the week or next week. And Nurse Nicole will be back as well at some point. For those, because I know a lot of y'all have been messaging us about Nurse Nicole, y'all can purchase any of her classes. And when you get the discount code, she'll be able to apply that. Her discount code is coming up soon. She's been very busy. And I believe she's also doing a summit in Florida. So she'll be doing some pretty cool work down there in February, I believe. All right, y'all. So I'm going to find the link too. Also forgot to mention to y'all that Nurse Nicole, her website is down. So she's not going to be able to respond to her website until that's all fixed. But her Facebook page is still up at Goodness Grover. Also know that her fall teas are going to be ending soon, and y'all don't want to miss out on that. She makes a killer pumpkin spice tea. If y'all like pumpkin spice, she has a pumpkin spice chai tea. She's got an apple tea. She's got some really darn good flavors. And that is the site right there, is Goodness Grover. So a little update on Arlington, because as y'all know, this is our next threat that we're dealing with. We've seen Monuments Avenue fall. We've seen Monument Avenue be destroyed. Arlington is on the chopping block, and I call them the shaming commission. They're the ones that are behind this. It's Mr. Ty Sigilai, and that guy is really sketchy. He wrote a whole book attacking General Lee. He's made his entire career attacking veterans and trying to tear them down. So we have this fantastic website on Facebook, and it is called Defend Arlington. So y'all make sure that you go and like that. I have the banner somewhere, I believe. If not, it's this, Defending Arlington. So that's on Facebook. It's a Facebook page that is run on there, and it has H.K. Edgerton on there. Mr. H.K. Edgerton, who is a veteran himself, a lot of people don't know that. He is getting together a community of different veterans together, and they're going to be working, to come together and, hopefully. Hey there, Justin. How are you? Great to see you. Well, I'd be seeing you in Gettysburg because I'll be there. I think I'm going to be marching with y'all too. Yep, it's Defending Arlington right on Facebook. And let me see if I can pull it up. I'm still getting used to all this technology. Defending Arlington, and I'll post that link right here in the chat box so y'all can see that link. Because I know we've also been shadow banned, but HK, he's doing a commission. He's getting veterans. Together for commission because, as you know, this monument, it's more than a monument. I call it a grave because I believe the sculptor is buried underneath, just like, AP Hill. So we also got to start calling this not only a grave, but it's a reconciliation monument. Like all Confederate monuments, they were built to help the nation heal and to help the wounds of the nation heal from this horrible war that didn't need to happen. But Lincoln brought it upon everyone. So Justin says, we like pumpkin spice. See you in Gettysburg. Isn't it pumpkin spice delicious, man? That is the one flavor, aside from peppermint, I really love. It's almost like you spend from January to like August, working. And then September, my birthday's in September, so I get to enjoy that. And autumn, and then you have Halloween in October, and you have all these wonderful flavors of like fall and winter, and I just love it. I love the different types of coffees, the peppermint, all that stuff is so good. And Nurse Nicole, she does seasonal teas, and her teas are fantastic. They have a lot of good herbs in there, and they're all very healing to the body. So she does a great job doing all that. And Justin, you would probably even love her courses. She does homeopathic classes. They're great for family and friends. We did her class, our family together, and we met a ton of different people from around the world. Some of them were more than happy to hear our history, which is a great networking opportunity. Meet some great family and not family and friends, but there are like family. Meet some great friends that way. And it's all good fun, and you have just a great time. I met another person from the homeopathic program who's in Kentucky. Really cool gentleman, and he's running the men's homeopathic group. So maybe I'll even get Nurse Nicole to come on and do a little lesson, kind of like an intro, because that would be really fun. All for the cause, Vin. Amen. Welcome, Mr. Shane. Mr. Shane says, hello from Mobile Bay. Hello there, Mr. Shane Melvin. And I forgot to mention too, Justin, her website is down. So just search Goodness Grover, and I had it up top, right on Facebook until her website gets back up. I think this is going to be the last few weeks or so. She's doing the fall teas, so get on them while y'all can. She definitely has some good options in there. Awesome. I'll be at Gettysburg this year. I'm hoping next year I'm going to have a room at this 1863 hotel. I ended up booking a hotel near there, just a really basic one. But I will be there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I made the mistake last minute of just going to and from on Saturday, which is doable because it's about 3 hours, but it's a long drive. So I prefer just to come back on Sunday. And it was an absolute amazing time. Love being in Gettysburg. It's great. It's a fun time flagging there. I went up there with my one buddy who is Maryland Flaggers. I was New Jersey Flaggers, and we had our own little Lee Jackson Day event out there because in 2021, a lot of places still had the mandates, and it was really ridiculous. So we had a fantastic time out there, and we went there flagging. We had a wonderful woman, so sweet, and we made her week, and that was just so rewarding. She grew up in Georgia. She has Georgia ancestry, and she loves the battle flag, loves the Confederate history and heritage because that's her family as well too. And she lives in Gettysburg, and she has a horse farm that she rides horses. So she was taking a ton of photos of us. It was the coolest thing, and we really made her day, and we made a ton of tourists' day. They kept taking a whole bunch of photos of us, and they loved it. Amen to that, Justin. Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware Confederates unite. Amen. We almost need like one of those fist emojis with a battle flag on it. And Delaware, y'all do a great job over there. So I just want to honor how great y'all are at the Delaware Grays Camp. It's always an honor to go to the memorial service out there. I had a fantastic time. I will definitely be coming out, and hopefully, because we're going to be talking about events, because we have a UDC meeting in New Jersey coming up soon. We're going to be talking about events in the future, and we're definitely going to try to get more of our SCV camp from Jersey, as well as our UDC chapter, to come out to the Delaware's memorial service, because we had such a great time. The amount of food was incredible. Food was delicious, y'all. And the other thing that was fantastic was the not the silent auction, the little raffle they had. Funny story about that. I love tea, y'all. I make a lot of scones. I do a lot of those recipes because part of my family is also British. And my great grandma would make amazing scones and the cucumber sandwiches, the egg salad sandwiches. So I would make a lot of afternoon teas, especially because I work from home, and I do a lot of running around, a lot of typing, and sometimes you just need a little pick-me-up instead of a full meal that weighs you down. And that's what's nice about tea, especially in the cold months. So I had tea dishes, saucers that were the General Lee Steamboat. And I remember they were on sale because the person only had 4 of them, and it wasn't a full set of 6. So I'm like, all right, I'll take 4 of them. I said, maybe, if the Lord has a plan for me, I'll find more. I'll 2 more. What are the chances in Delaware? I'm there with the Delaware Grays supporting them. It was a fantastic event, and they had the raffle there. So I put a few tickets in for the one thing. I didn't care, about the other ones that I put tickets in. I just wanted the one basket that had the 2 dishes in there. They go to read the one ticket number. It wasn't my ticket. My heart sinks. And the rule was you had to be there to win it. Person wasn't there. I'm all excited. They read the second ticket. Uh-oh. It was the next one. The person wasn't there. 3rd time's a charm. I was taking my pulse, and my heart's racing. Please, please, please. They call out the number, and it was my ticket. And I was like, yes. I think I jumped out of the chair. And it was the last only 2 dishes in there for the tea saucers of the General Lee steamship. So I completed my entire little set right there. So I've been looking around too for if there's ever a Confederate themed, teapot or Confederate themed, teacup. That would be so cool. Like to have each cup like a set of 6 different Confederate generals, and have like maybe Jefferson Davis like the teapot and like some of the battle flags. That would be a really fun touch. Have like a rebel tea. We would do rebel tea, and several of our compatriots would all just hang out and have a good time. And we would do all the fixings of regular tea. So you'd have the small sandwiches, you would have the scones, and you would have the little desserts that I would make. And then we did, to make it a rebel tea, we did a mint julep. So it was really fun. Or we'll do a shot of whiskey, either or of those. So it was a really good idea to get people together, and just a really nice time to have some snacks and good conversation. Because sometimes when you have amen to that, Mr. Jeff Plummer is amazing. We got to have him on here one day to talk about stuff, because he is truly a great guy. And y'all have a great UDC chapter out there, the Caleb Ross chapter. There's some great ladies out there. They know their history, and they have taught me quite a bit. And y'all, I don't know if y'all know this, but in Delaware, the governor at that time, it was Governor Ross, his son, up and tried to leave Delaware to fight for the Confederacy. So while he was in Virginia, he died of disease, unfortunately, before he saw combat. And he is honored today in Delaware by the UDC chapter, the Caleb Ross UDC, that honors him with his name. Great group of ladies out there. Shane says, I've been to the monument. It needs to be protected. Also, I have been to Gettysburg. Yes, it does. And that's the problem. Arlington, it used to be so easy to go there and visit. And now they make it challenging. And, every time they would say that, oh, something is fine and they're not going to touch it, that's usually their warning of saying, oh, we're not going to touch it now because we've already removed too much, but maybe next year we'll take it off the chopping block or put it on the chopping block. That's been the problem. You have to be cautiously optimistic when you have a win, because as you know how the politics work, if they don't take away your rights now, they always try to take away your rights in a different, more sly way. That's been the case in Florida. Speaking of which, Save Southern Heritage Florida, they are also doing a great job at helping raise awareness to Arlington. So please support them, y'all. This is why our enemies are stronger than us. They can fundraise better. We make this happen with funds. And this is the problem. You have to hire people to litigate this. And that's what people don't know about, is these cases take a while to litigate. Mr. Shane says, yes, hand fist with the battle flag. Confederate lives matter. Amen. CLM. I love that. Mr. Christian Scholl said, one of those things that was meant to be, Vinny. Amen, Mr. Christian. That tea saucer, it was just, what's the chance, right? I buy this tea set. It was just kind of like, 4 is fine, because we bring it out for like Lee Jackson Day, or celebrating Confederate Heroes Day, or Confederate Memorial Day, or Confederate History Month in April. We would have like little rebel teas. So I'd bring out all the tea sets, and if we didn't have like, we had regular teacups and whatnot. So if we didn't have the teacup, we would just use like a battle flag cup that I have a few mugs, and we'd have a very nice time. I love that. Mr. Justin says, Rebels only tea for UDC and SCV. We got to start doing that, more of that. I kind of came up with the idea last year, and it was like, basically, why don't we start uniting? Because remember, people don't know this. And I have the history books on the UDC. Fantastic organization, fantastic ladies. I tell people, if you have any spare change, please donate to them. It helps them grow, and all that. And I think they might have a link online. I don't know if they changed it, but I think there was a link online. You can donate directly. But we need to start uniting, because originally the way the UDC formed was it was 2 women, one of them from Tennessee and one of them from Georgia, with their groups that were called the Daughters of the Confederacy or something. And what happened was their name was the same. So what happened was the lady in Tennessee was realizing that, and hearing rumors that there's another woman in Georgia who's doing the same thing you are, getting the veterans together, honoring them, decorating the graves. So all of a sudden they wrote to each other and they met up and they united. Because they united, it changed the group's name to United Daughters of the Confederacy instead of just Daughters of the Confederacy. So them uniting, we're able to actually do more together. It showed how all the states can get involved. And what's really crazy and cool is that at the turn of the century, California, of all places, had a whole division. And they still have a great division of the UDC. Places you'd never expect had a whole division. Like I believe Nevada had a division. Up until recently, Arizona had a division. New York had a division. Verena Davis and her daughters helped charter Chapter 103 in New York, of all places, New York City. Boston even had a chapter until recently. And it was all these great things that they did together. And, to help the nation heal, to help all veterans, to help their fellow Southerners, to help build their towns up better. That's how they started. So if we could unite, because we all have great information, the Daughters of the Confederacy are pretty much an entire genealogical group of every Confederate figure, including those that weren't just a soldier, but those that were, in government, those that were the regular civilian that were impacted by the Yankees. And they have wonderful programs. I pay dues as an honorary associate member from the UDC to honor my ancestor, because I don't know if y'all knew this. A lot of our Confederate ancestors, before the UCV was there, they would pay dues as an honorary associate member to be part of the UDC. So what that means is that, you give, some of the money and you're able to attend the meetings. You learn so much history from them, and their programs are legendary, and their food. All right, y'all, you will probably gain 10 pounds from the SCV, but the UDC, how good their cooking is, I've easily gained 20 pounds. And I learned about different cultures. Some of our members that were Orthodox Jewish taught me about some really good kosher foods and their, different cultures, which is fantastic. I got to attend my first Shiva, which is fantastic, and learning about how they deal with the grieving process. And I took some of those ideas back for when we had a funeral. Instead of making it about the sadness, it was about celebrating life. And it was just all around fantastic. That's a good point, Mr. Justin. He says, Yankees greedily take away everything they can. That's right. And it's sometimes, if it's not like from early on, you'll find that with the policies will be worded something else. And all of a sudden, if you look in the policy, it'll say, oh, this applies to the monuments. Love it. CLMT. Miss Emily Murphy Bowling says, California division member, love the tea idea. Thank you so much for your service, Miss Emily. I truly appreciate it. California, and I have 2 of their books. I treasure them so much. One of them on Dixie Manor, and they talk about the Confederate Veterans Home that they had in California and who was there, and how before the Veterans Home there were homeless veterans on the street. And for those of y'all that think that the homeless veterans is a new issue, it's not. It's always been a problem. There were homeless Confederate veterans that were in California, and the women, them all getting together, built this beautiful veterans home, and nurses and all that. They came together to help these veterans, and it was known as Dixie Manor. Truly a fantastic book. And I have some of the older issues of UDC magazine. Miss Moretti did a fantastic book on that, as well as there was another one on the genealogy, and it included like the who was given the Cross of Honor. Frank says, let the record reflect the truth. Amen. Justin Cruz says, Confederate monuments even made their way into the Supreme Court debate on affirmative action this week. It's absurd. That's the problem. Our monuments, they shouldn't be in court, because what they're saying now is our monuments are free speech. And there's already been several cases that set precedents. Basically what happens, y'all, in the court setting is that, different cases had different rulings, and you use those cases and the rulings for precedents. So for future cases, for evidence on how to potentially rule and handle a case. And there were several cases that prove that monuments are the freedom of speech. There's some monuments that, look, I might not be a fan of, but you know what? I deal with it and I walk past it. That's fine, Miss Emily says, I just got that book at our convention. You are going to love it, Miss Emily. It is fantastic. A lot of good facts in there, and some stuff that was just like mind-blowing. Because California, it's the last place you'd expect, but there is quite a bit of Confederate heritage there. California even had the Gillis flag, and I believe for like $5, you can still get it on the SCV store. They have a replica of what exactly that flag looked like. It is a lot more bigger than the First National. It looks similar to the First National, and the color is a little bit different. It's a lighter blue. I believe it's a slightly different tone of red for the bars, and it's really, unique and interesting. And even like some of the women too in California, like historically, like the real daughters, they were pretty cool. There was a real daughter who was still alive in, I think, the 1990s. And I know there's only a handful of real daughters left, and which is sad, but it's really neat to to learn all that, because the real daughter are basically who remembers the veteran themselves. And how cool is that? It's like a living time capsule. And there are still people out there that might remember maybe a grandfather or something like that. The coolest thing that I've ever met at one of my conventions I went to was a real grandson who was only 50 years old, and his actual grandfather was a Confederate veteran. That was the most fascinating person I've ever met. Shane says Julian, California is named after a Confederate veteran. That's kind of like Helmetta, New Jersey. It's named after a Confederate veteran as well. So a lot of states that are out west, up north, they might have a lot of CSA heritage I don't know about. Mr. Frank Galvin, one of our regular Unapologetics, he says Veterans Administration in West Los Angeles, California was donated by a Confederate soldier for all veterans. Look up the truth about the VA in West Los Angeles, California. Thank you for that. He said his last name was Julian. Oh, sometimes I always get confused with that too, because I know if like the last name is like, I know Alexander or something like that, it gets a little confusing, but that was pretty cool. Thank you for that. Mr. Alex Schultz, great to see you. He says, good day, Vinny. Good day, Alex. Great to see you. I actually have and this is something I found at a library. So I always tell people, please check your local libraries. You never know what they're trying to get rid of. They try to get rid of a whole bunch of UDC magazines. So basically, what happened about a year ago was some libraries are purging their books. So when there were previous UDC chapters or SCV camps, they would give either the Confederate Veteran or UDC magazine to the local library. And it was a way to get people to learn their history. And it was a great little gesture of here is, free knowledge. This library in Virginia was trying to purge all that. So I said, let me just take it off your hands. So I was able to come across a copy of the rare, it's the 100th year commemorative issue of UDC magazine. And it features Winnie Davis on there. And I know I also have the modern copy of their one that's like all in color, and it's their commemorative issue. My mom and sister are both UDC members, and they do a great job in Jersey. So I can't praise the ladies enough. And the tea idea was great because it's a great way to unite everyone. We come together for this great tea, and I make desserts. So I usually make Jeff Davis pie. I include my recipe, and I make Robert E. Lee cake if I have time. And Robert E. Lee cake is basically a pound cake. It's very light. It's citrusy. So if you all like lemon, you'll love the cake. It goes well with a nice oolong tea or a breakfast tea. And it has a light icing on it with orange juice in it, and it's got a lemon filling. I do that. I do the Jefferson Davis pie, which is kind of like a pumpkin pie, but without the pumpkin. It's got spices in there. And I do a few other recipes as well if I have time. And, it's always great to, give back like that, and you have a great time. Some of them also make their own signature dishes. Like I had one of my fellow UDC sisters make I think they were like kosher cookies, and they were very good. And one of them was like a cherry flavor, like a cherry vanilla. And it was extremely light, extremely good, and it was fantastic. And that's the one thing, y'all, us Southerners, we know how to cook. Hands down, Southern food is the best. Maybe you get a few good Northern dishes in there. Like I know Maine, they have lobster. But in terms of food, Maryland has some of the best crab that you only find in Maryland. There was one restaurant, they make the Maryland crab with a delicious cheddar cheese, and it is so savory and so yummy. That's the one thing when I compare dishes, crab or lobster, it's always hard for me to pick, but I like a lobster mac and cheese. But if I'm having a crab dish, I like to have it with cheddar cheese and a few potatoes in there. Oh, look at this. Speaking of books, I recently got a book about Jackson's chaplain, Reverend Lacey. That's really cool. How is it? How is the book? There's a book that I'm going to be hopefully purchasing soon from Confederate Memorial Hall. They featured it in their one magazine issue, and it's on, if I'm not mistaken, I know this, it's on Reverend Sheridan. And I might be pronouncing the last name wrong. It might be Sheridan. He's buried in New Jersey. So he actually was a chaplain, and, he sassed Stonewall a few times, but he sassed Stonewall knowing he can get away with it. And he was a really cool chaplain. And it's really crazy to think that after the war between the states, he's one of 3 chaplains in New Jersey that were Confederate. The other one had a better chance because he was born in New Jersey, but he fought for the Confederacy. He helped build, I think, 2 or 3 churches in New Jersey, and he was a Confederate. And he's honored there today, which is fantastic. The church is proud of his service and sacrifice, which was a total win in this cancel culture war. They did not cave into the left. Unfortunately, Princeton, because his family was very well known around the Princeton area, his father's name was stripped off the chapel in Princeton because he was a colonial figure, and they had a local group that didn't like that he was a colonial figure, and they were pushing to change the name. So Princeton has been caving into cancel culture. The other sad thing is that Princeton, it did have a lot of Southern heritage. A lot of Southerners got their education at Princeton. They had an art exhibit because their art museum is a wonderful public exhibit. They refused to honor 2 Jewish men because they both fought in the Confederacy. So both of their pieces were forbidden from being in the museum. We tried fighting it with our local Jewish groups, and unfortunately nothing was done. The college just kind of stood by and said, no, we're not going to display it because it's Confederate related. I'm like, well, there's nothing Confederate in the artwork. And then the response was, oh, but the artist was a Confederate veteran. Okay, well, so what? There was a lot of Confederate veterans. Are we going to cancel Coca-Cola? Are y'all no longer going to sell Coca-Cola in the vending machine because it's offensive? I really don't get that whole logic of how they're picking and choosing. And now it's so much as if you served honorably in the Confederacy, you're getting canceled, which is so ridiculous. Mr. Christian said, some of the best food I had while trucking was in the South. You are not wrong. Ain't that the truth? And then especially a good old, you can't beat a good old breakfast deal at Cracker Barrel. I usually go there when I'm on the road, get something light, refuel and all that. That's like my go-to restaurant when on the go and not have to break the bank. Mr. Alex says, I haven't begun reading it yet, but you can buy it from the Confederate shop. I'll let you know. Thank you. Let's see. Shane says, Julian was not well liked in San Diego, so he settled in the mountains and the town started. That was another issue. A lot of our Confederate heroes, they faced discrimination, especially if they were up north or out west. I know that people don't know this, but basically, there was I believe it was a street name or a plaque or something. It was the Jefferson Davis Street, I think it was. And that was highly debated in California. They had the GAR at the time that were fighting the Daughters of Confederacy and said, we don't want this. And this was in the 30s. So they changed the name, but the women were relentless. They fought hard, and eventually they got the street name back. And it stayed that way for many years until recently when they changed it during 2020. The same thing with the monuments. They tried fighting them on that, and they had to fight a long while to win. So this whole idea of the Yankees not liking our heritage, it's nothing new. And it's something that we have to be unapologetic and we have to be relentless with. Because eventually they're just going to give in. We cannot let them take our heritage, and we can't let them win. But I think that's pretty cool that, from San Diego, which was a tough area, he was able to reestablish himself. Mr. John Muma says, I enjoy your show from Canada. Thank you, Mr. John. I really appreciate it. Always great when we have Canadian viewers and viewers from UK. It's so awesome that we're reaching that many people. Justin says, Princeton was the most northern location to receive a southern education, according to what I've read. You are correct. It was the top school up north for Southerners. I think their student southern body was about like 50, 60%. I think it was more than 50. It was way up there. And I remember at the, First Manassas, what I call the Battle of Yankee Run, there was a ton of First National flags flying all over Princeton. The Princeton students even did a demonstration at that time to secede from the Union. They wanted New Jersey to secede. We were only 4 votes away from secession. Part of the problem was because Maryland didn't secede, and in turn, Delaware didn't secede. New Jersey, unfortunately, stayed in the Union with Delaware and Maryland. But if Maryland was allowed to leave, if they weren't illegally locked up, it would have been Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and that would have helped a lot. New Jersey would have been stuck in the worst location if, they seceded. We would have been surrounded, and we wouldn't have been able to do much. However, there were people on both sides in New Jersey, much like Maryland and Delaware, and people tend to forget that. Don't always write off. If you have family from New Jersey, they could have been Confederate. I had one ancestor who was born in Sparta, New Jersey. He fled to Alabama, served honorably in the Confederacy, and he retired in Florida. And he's buried in Florida. Says it right on his tombstone. Born Sparta, New Jersey, CSA. And it was the coolest headstone to actually read, that I was so honored to have that connection in my family tree. Mr. Shane says, exactly, cancel Coca-Cola. They are afraid to change the name. Wouldn't that be something if all of a sudden they go, oh, we're going to cancel Dr. Pepper, we're going to cancel Coca-Cola because it's offensive and, it was made by a Confederate veteran. And my response would be, oh, so you're saying it's bad that a wounded veteran who had basically PTSD and had addiction issues made this soda, or back then was a decoction, the coca wine it was known as, made this to help veterans that were struggling with addiction as well as women. So he made it for needy women and veterans that were, essentially addicts. He made this back then when this was a new social issue, because people forget that after the war between the states, not only was homelessness a big issue for veterans, but another big issue was addiction. A lot of veterans back then suffered with PTSD. Now, PTSD, it wouldn't be known as such. It was called soldier's heart back then. So if you all are reading reports on either, old documents or stuff on veterans back then, and you read soldier's heart, just know that that's PTSD. It's the old diagnosis of it, because they didn't understand why some of these veterans who had been through trauma were acting the way they acted. No two people respond to trauma the same way. So PTSD, as we know it now, we have a lot more information on it today, and we're able to look back in the past and see that quite a few people who had soldier's heart more than likely had PTSD. And if we look at our notes of the American Revolution, it's also very possible it existed back then. Justin says, wow, real history. That's right. And also, Justin, so our UDC chapter is named after Isaac W.K. Handy, and our soon-to-be second SCV camp in New Jersey will be named after him as well. So Reverend Isaac W.K. Handy, he received his education at Princeton. He was a Southerner. And what happened was, during the war between the states, he was a regular civilian. He was a, doctor of divinity. He was a reverend. He was not involved in any kind of Confederate, work. But what happened was, he had an ill, I believe one of his family members was ill or something like that. Either his family member or his wife's family. I believe the wife's family. So he got permission to cross enemy lines. This was very dangerous because if you were a Southern civilian going into enemy territory, you have a target on your back. Just know that. So while he's at the Reverend dinner there, they have all the people there, reverends, they're eating dinner. They have the stars and stripes on the wall and they're eating the dinner. And they say, Isaac, what's your opinion of that flag over there? And he responded completely, mellow, but honest. And that was the other issue. Honesty back then could get you locked up, and it did with him. And he said, well, y'all, I agree with the principles on which that flag was founded, but it is clear to me that the people in DC do not. Therefore, I can only look at it as a tattered rag. What he meant by that, because people misinterpret quotes, was that the values of life, liberty, self-governance, all those wonderful values that our country was founded upon were not being enforced under the Lincoln's administration, as well as the early Republicans who were too busy trying to take away liberties and rights. And when he said that, there was a collective just silence at the dinner table. They said you can hear the food just falling off the fork, dead silent. And it was like, oh. Someone said, Isaac, do you want to rethink what you said? And he goes, nope. Well, his name ends up in the paper. And there was someone that was on Lincoln's administration that said, let's make an example out of him. The police were at his door the next day. He was dragged off to Fort Delaware, where he would spend 15 grueling months about Fort Delaware. And they would say it was the warden. He would say, Isaac, he goes, all you have to do is sign this saying, I support the Union and you're free. The oath of allegiance. And he said, I am a Virginian gentleman and Virginian gentlemen never lie. Every time he was given the oath of allegiance, he would say that. And as a result, he stuck it out. He ended up being freed. And I believe he was deported back to Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Brian Wells says we have to get the truth out in the mainstream media, social media, and teach this generation and the next generation the truth about the South, the war for Southern independence, and the North's aggression and destruction against the South. Many atrocities were committed against Southern folks. That's correct. And the more we make this aware, the more it will change the narrative. I had several hearts that were flipped when I told them some of the war crimes that were committed, and they were horrified, especially about that woman who, not Arizona, Arkansas, they literally held her feet to the fire. They shoved her feet into the coal tube and it burned the flesh right off her leg. Stuff like that is what people need to hear about. And she lost both legs as a result. Mr. Alex says, Maryland were also CSA in some parts. Don't forget about Henry KYD Douglas's family at Ferry Hill. His family were locked up by Union armies for their paranoia about the family being Confederate spies. I have to look more into that. That's pretty crazy. In Maryland, they had a lot of political prisoners. In Maryland, especially towns like Port Tobacco, La Plata, there was a lot of civilians that would fight back against the unlawful, treatment that was happening. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. Justin gave me a round of applause. Amen. Justin says our rights come from God, not Yankees. That's true. We have God-given rights. And unfortunately, as we saw in 2020, 2021 until now, they were not held up in certain states. Some states took our own rights and they threw them out the window. And we had to fight for them. And that's not okay. In New Jersey, for example, we had to fight really hard for our rights. Victor. Shame. He says, Vinny, you are fired. Why am I fired, Victor? Let me know. Oh, he's one of my awesome compatriots. Mr. Brian Wells says, David O'Dodds was a teenager murdered by the Yankees. He was an innocent teenager. That's right. War crimes like that happened all the time. And you also talk about like how the prisons were. This is what's scary. A lot of people don't even know that these Yankee prisons were horrible. Look at this is what I love, right? About the double standard. People don't understand that with Andersonville. Andersonville was bad because the South was already belt-tightened for resources. They tried writing Lincoln and letting him know that, hey, we will give your prisoners resources if you give us this. And they want to do a trade agreement. Lincoln stopped the prisoner trade, number one. The prisoner exchange helped get people out of prison. They would trade them out. Unfortunately, when he stopped that, he would take all the Southerners and crowd them in horrible conditions because he viewed the Yankees as disposable. The Southern men was a true brotherhood in the armies. The Northern armies were not like that. There was not the sense of brotherhood there. And what ends up happening is you would see these overcrowded prisons, whole areas that were never meant to be prisons were used as prison camps. For example, if I remember Point Lookout, that was a vacation area that was converted into a prison camp. Elmira, or as we call it, Hellmira, because it was hell, was the similar situation, never meant to be a prison camp. And as a result of the crowded conditions, disease spread like wildfire. There was malnutrition. A lot of times they took their clothes off. They had to stay practically nude in the ice cold winters. People died of frostbite. People died of diseases. People died of heat stroke, contaminated water. So in reality, Andersonville was not that bad compared to other places. In fact, I believe it was Camp Douglas, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the worst ones with the highest mortality rate, if not Point Lookout, a close second, and then Elmira. Those top three were absolutely awful. There was prison camps in places you'd never expect, like Wisconsin. And after the war between the states, it took a long time for the Confederate dead to even get honored. You know, the Yankees, they had wonderful, well-manicured graves. The Confederate veterans, all thrown into one pit to be forgotten about. And that's part of the problem. You know, they weren't given the proper respect. And after the war, the women couldn't go and get their dead. The Southerners couldn't get their dead. It was the women that helped make Memorial Day possible. And that is the truth that people forget about. Victor says you are fired for crimes against humanity and supporting veganism. Yeah, Victor, it's actually National Vegan Day, but a little humor here. So, y'all, I used to be vegan for 5 years. I didn't like where veganism was going. It was becoming far too political, especially politically left-wing. They were attacking pretty much everything American. And I said, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. It ain't for me. I went back to eating meat. And I celebrated National Vegan Day by having a very nice, juicy cheeseburger with cheddar cheese and bacon. Alex says, Douglas was an assistant adjutant general for Stonewall Jackson. His family suffered a lot under the Union Army. Wow. Mr. Bryan says, David O'Donnell was from Little Rock, Arkansas. Victor, you're funny. Although I will say this, though, in all fairness, there was some really good vegan dishes I had. And like once in a while, it's good to have a healthy dish. I try to eat healthy when I can, eat all the vegetables, and I indulge when I want to. But for the most part, some of the stuff that's coming out now is a little like, kind of like a little Frankenstein in like a can. Like there was chicken flavored vegan ham. And I'm like, that looks like dog food. It looked like canned dog food. And it even like had that gross texture and it like jiggled. And I'm like, nope, put it in the trash. Granted, back when I was, eating more plant-based foods, it was before it was like, everywhere. So you truly had to cook from scratch and learn how to cook. And that's what made it a lot different back then. Whereas now, I've had someone try to tell me that they were eating cupcakes and they were saying, oh, these are healthy cupcakes. What makes them healthy cupcakes? Oh, they're vegan. I'm like, yeah, well, guess what? Sugar is naturally vegan. A lot of things are naturally vegan. It's still a cupcake, not a healthy dish with beans and salmon and all that. So that was the other thing that I'm like, make sure that you actually eat healthy instead of eating just junk food. Mr. Bryan says, possum in a can is good. I saw your post earlier today, LOL. Yeah, could you imagine that? Possum in a can if they had like pumpkin spice? That would be funny. Y'all, I like these food memes. They're funny. They have these ridiculous food memes that are dishes that are a little salty and a little crazy, but it was just all good fun humor. Do any of y'all have any fun plans coming up? I know that soon we're doing a fun little joint SCV UDC event that's coming up in a few weeks. I'm also going to be in Gettysburg in November. So not November, a few more weeks. So it'll be the Remembrance Day parade. I'm going to try to go live from there, y'all. Hopefully everything goes well. I also have finals week coming up, which should be fun. Not sure if y'all know my tone. I'm like, yeah, fun. No, not really. But I'm making progress with PhD. I believe I'm starting the residency soon, so that'll be nice to get that done with. And it's just one step closer to being a doctor. Oh, very nice. Mr. Christian said there's college this Saturday for me and some friends. Any fun college classes? I did, Christian, I did a Saturday class for biology, and it was a Saturday bio class. And if you can imagine this, try getting up at 6:30 in the morning. You were all half awake. You can't have food or drink in the lab. So we would do lecture and then we would do lab. So I was completely just like burned out from it. And then I'll never forget, I always came on time because I like biology. And we had a class on Halloween. So we had a student that came an hour and a half late and she was fully dressed. I think she was like Pocahontas from that movie Neverland. Tiger Lily. No, she was Tiger Lily. And she was, fully covered in makeup and like this whole like tribal outfit. She busts in the door. The teacher's mouth just dropped and she gasped. the teacher went off on us for an entire 30 minutes and she educated us on the law of karma. And then she was like, how would you guys feel if I just came in whenever I wanted to? And I was like laughing. I'm like, yeah, sounds about right. Mr. Bryan says, hope to go to Lee Jackson Day in Lexington, Virginia. I will be there. I'm going to be making that trip as well, which is always fun. Alex says, planning a trip over the next year to retrace CSA ancestor steps. That's really cool, Alec. I always love doing that because I find that when you get to do that, it makes the genealogy so much more interesting. It brings it alive and you're able to, do all that fun stuff. Christian says college football. Sorry. Oh, I was like, oh, wow, a Saturday class. It's not often you hear about that. Christian says, I wake up at 4 a.m. for work. That's insanity. Whew. My old job, I was a restaurant and bar manager, and basically on a good day, especially if it was a Saturday, you were lucky if you were getting out of there at 3 a.m. Most of the time, it was like 3:30, and in rare cases, it'd be a lot later if you had to clean up and make the restaurant look somewhat presentable for the morning manager. Even worse when you were working back to back, and then you were basically opening and closing like 2 or 3 days in a row, because I've been in that position before, and never again am I ever going to do something like that. And now that I got a more professional job, it's like I'm glad those days are over, because I was working like nonstop, and it wears on you. That's the one thing too. I know when doing college classes, I used to get so irritated because my entire schedule would be like Monday through Friday and then even Saturday. And then I prefer to do the online classes because I'm able to work, make that money, put that money towards, school, go online, do my work and do it at my own pace and still get the education in. So stuff like that I really like. And that's something that as an educator myself, I always love, I record my own lectures, I post them up. So it's still like class time and class lecture, and they're still getting the information in as well. That's the one thing too. I wish that they'd have a college class and it would be called something like Confederate history and have it as a fun history elective and, study the Southland, from the colonial era, a focus on the war between the states, and then focus on Reconstruction, reconciliation. And then today, leave like a whole week to study about where we are today and why this iconoclasm is bad. And, to make it even more palatable, don't have any required textbooks per se, but give them the information like online. If there's online books they can use, have the books. You can say, okay, here's a link for the book. You don't have to pay anything extra, but if you want to buy a hard copy, here's a hard copy link. Have a few good speakers in there. We would really do a great job with that. Mr. Shane says Americans are being completely lied to in school, etc. So many have no idea that the War of Northern Aggression was a second war of independence. Yet let's keep flying a British flag, an American flag that supported slavery. That's right. That's absolutely right. What's really ironic? I've had someone completely go off of me for flying the battle flag, and they'll say, you're flying a flag that lost the war. The funny thing was, in a lot of our towns, you'll see the American flag, or what I call the USA flag, because Confederate flags are American flags. We would see the USA flag and the British flag flying. And I'm like, right there, that's a contradiction. British lost the war, but they still honor them. Why can't we honor our ancestors? They're just as important. Brian says, what's the latest on Confederate Monument in Arlington? Praying they leave it alone. I have sent emails to be a voice for it to stay. So with that monument situation, I'll even post a link down below for y'all. It's our widget. The monument I am worried about, and I'm going to be honest with y'all, because as you've seen before, they hear people out and they just do anything. They have their minds made up. This is probably going to be something that if they decide to remove this monument, we're going to have to show up there peacefully, because this is enough. They are not going to take down this monument that's in a cemetery. The fact that they want to go in there with a crane and destroy it, that's extremely disgusting. It shows that they want to remove a reconciliation monument to show that they don't want to be united. They want to be divided. That's what they're telling us when they take down our monuments. Are we going to be taking down Yankee monuments next? This ain't right. So I'm going to go pull up the widget for y'all, and I'm going to post that in the link. Make sure y'all go and check this out. defendarlington.org. All right, y'all, here is the link to defendarlington.org, and I'm going to post this right here. So on here, this includes everything. That includes everything that you all need to know to help defend Arlington. And I believe it's right there. DefendArlington.org, that's the website. That's the link to get to it. And it's going to tell you how to get involved. There's 2 parts to this widget. Do this multiple times a day. Make sure you send letters out. Send this to your family, your friends, anyone who's interested. We all have to be doing this because the more letters I get, the better. They're going to try to avoid, hearing all this. And this is the problem. Alex says, I keep saying the South will secede again if they're not careful. Yeah, something's got to give, because I honestly think that if not Arlington, an attack on Stone Mountain, if they want to sandblast that, would be more than enough to really get people going, because there's a limit to how much people are going to be willing to take with this nonsense. Brian says we need to publicize it as much as possible. Everyone needs to get involved. Amen to that. And I tell people, now is not the time to be fighting one another. Now is the time to unite, because our enemies are so well united. We have to be stronger than them, and we have to set an example that you are not going to touch our monuments. You're going to leave our monuments alone, and you're going to put up all of our monuments that you removed back where they belong in their original place. We have got to stop giving in to these radicals, because the more we do this, the more they win, the more they get away with stuff. And I do have hope, because Twitter has gotten a lot better. The censorship is not as bad. Please post pro-Confederate stuff on there. Post as much of it as possible, because the benefit of that is that eventually what's going to happen is we're going to have wins on there. I've already grown more than half, well over doubled. I probably tripled my followers overnight because of the algorithm. The more we raise awareness about how they want to destroy Arlington, we should almost do a challenge that, pick a certain day and we'll all post a Confederate battle flag and say, I support the CSA. The more people that do that on Twitter, it sends that out. Something like that would be incredible, like a massive post, almost like they did the black square, that horrible black square trend of 2020. We should do a battle flag square. That would really send the message across. That's right. Shane says, no one is going after American currency with pictures of slave owners. Let that sink in. But they will sure spend the currency. That's right. And same thing with, there's another monument in Arlington. It's of Mr. Pratt, and he was absolutely horrible to the Native Americans. He opened Carlisle Indian School, and he would take Native American children away from their parents and ship them off to the school. He's buried in Arlington, and his monument there says the Indians loved him. That was not true. That couldn't be farther from the truth. And it's really funny, because this whole shaming commission, they claim to be like, helping America be more united. They're dividing. How come they're leaving that Yankee monument up, who was bad at Native Americans, but they're trying to tear down a diverse monument? It shows diversity in this monument. It was made by a Jewish American. I don't know what more they could possibly want. This monument that we have in Arlington, our reconciliation monument, is a wonderful, diverse monument. And Ty Sigilai is trying to get rid of it. He is the one that's behind all this. Our military, unfortunately, has gotten woke, and that's also part of the issue. A lot of them are super left-wing, anti-monument. They don't really know the importance of preserving our heritage. It's the older generations and the older veterans that understand why we need to preserve our history and heritage. And that's why Mr. H.K. Edgerton on Defend Arlington on Facebook is trying to rally together veterans. So please share that group, like that group, share it to anyone who's interested. This is a time for everyone to be united against this. That's right. Mr. Bryan says it brought healing to the nation when it was erected. The monument had a fantastic history behind it. And I believe it was like 4 presidents or so were part of this whole process of that monument. And there was a president that went there. I forgot which one exactly, but he was fantastic. He loved the monument. He was extremely happy to see it go up and to see this be made as a tribute to, honor the fallen. And this was also made possible by the women. Look at how many amazing women got together to make this monument possible through fundraising, through raising money, through honoring our veterans. They made this possible through years of hard work. It did not happen overnight. So it's important to honor that service and sacrifice. Unfortunately, when this cancel culture thing started, they said, oh, well, we're just going to attack the battle flag. It's not going to be a monument. Then all of a sudden they started attacking all monuments. That's right. Shane said Grant's monument is standing in front of the Capitol building. People also forget this too. There's a lot of Union monuments, and believe it or not, they are identical to Southern monuments because a lot of Southern monuments were made up north and they were manufactured up north, produced up north. Some of them, if you were really lucky, were made in a different way, but there are several monuments. They all look identical. The only thing different is that the belt buckle on the monument says CSA instead of USA. Sand says never vandalized. That's right. It's only, well, here's a crazy thing too. People don't know this. During the mostly peaceful summer of love, they were coming after Union monuments, which is really crazy to think that now Union monuments are being removed. There's a Union monument in the New Jersey Capitol, not New Jersey Capitol, in the Capitol Rotunda. So in the Rotunda, each state would give two monuments, right? New Jersey's monument, one of them is a Yankee. And what happened was a lot of the left, they were like, no, we don't want to honor him. We want to take him down. They got the votes and they voted to remove the monument. They took him down and they replaced his monument. They're replacing it with Alice Paul. The only thing that she did was get force fed. So that I thought was really interesting how they're now coming after Yankee monuments. And it's another moment of I told you so. And do I have hope with the current elections coming up? Yes and no. I don't expect too much to be done. I would be mildly surprised if it were, because as you know, the right is no better than the left with a lot of these issues. And that's the problem. Some of them have not taken the vow to preserve history. Some of them have attacked our monuments but want to preserve the Yankee ones. And I'm not sure that anything really meaningful will happen. I do know that I'm impressed to see in New York, of all places, there's people that are mad at the governor because crime is at an all-time high in New York, and it's getting bad there. You know, I've known people that lived in New York. They don't even want to live there anymore. And I tell them, I said, hey, if you want to leave New York, keep those Yankee grievances in New York. Don't bring them down to Dixie. If you want to move down to Dixie, these are the American flags that you fly. So what are y'all thoughts on the upcoming elections? Do you think it's going to be a big turnout? Do you think that there's going to be any major change? Always interested in hearing people's opinions on this because I'm hearing a lot of mixed results. Amen to that. Brian says they are scared to speak up for fear of being labeled racist, and that's the problem. If they're too afraid to speak up, then I'm afraid I can't give them my vote. And I hate to be that way, but I've pretty much come to that conclusion. Enough is enough. How many times someone will tell you, oh, I'll support you off the record. You go and support them, and all of a sudden they turn around and say, okay, I'm going to sign this bill that removes monument. That's right. Mr. Justin says, Americans are so uninformed, so the Marxists are swooping in to take all history. NY governor's race is going red. I would be really interested in seeing what happens because I know that New York, they removed monuments left and right. They removed monuments of Thomas Jefferson. They removed Teddy Roosevelt's monument outside the Museum of Natural History, which I said, you know what? I'm not setting foot in that museum. And guess what? I haven't gone in there. I had friends cancel their membership to that museum. Let that museum go under because that museum was made possible by him. He did so much for that museum and everything. In New York, they came after, they had a fantastic UDC chapter. They came after the Robert E. Lee tree. They removed the plaque. You're really going to go after a plaque on a tree? Like how pathetic do you have to be to do something like that? And that's what the town did. They went after street names and all that. Yeah, that's always a big issue, Jody. I know it is in New Jersey. And like I tell people all the time, like we've had like 2 weeks or something. It was like early voting or something. I didn't even know it was a thing. It seems like it keeps getting longer. Pretty soon it'll be voting month, at the rate it's going. I also know that other areas that might change, I believe potentially Oregon might, which will be probably a step in the right direction. I'd be really impressed to see California change because California, they've been through the nightmares that you can only imagine that would happen in a horror film, but not real life. And California, they went from being like the best state for medical freedom to being one of the worst states overnight in 2015. They had a philosophical and a religious exemption, and they lost that. So California, a lot of good patriots left that state because of how bad things were going there. And also, at society as a whole, there's got to be certain things that we got to start condemning. We got to start condemning, deviance in the way things are going, and that's the problem. Jody, I agree. California will never change. It's so crooked. Yeah, I don't blame you on thinking like that. Same with Washington, like Seattle, like how bad that's gotten. A lot of great Southerners were in Seattle. And a lot of those women left. I don't blame them because it's gotten that bad. They don't want to live there anymore. Same with Michigan, Wisconsin. North Dakota is not too good. I know South Dakota is better. New Jersey is barely tolerable. Teresa says, I'm from Atlanta. Can I speak about it too? Go for it. I know Atlanta is another issue. That used to be a wonderful southern city, and it's pretty darn bad. Not a place I'd want to drive through. I've driven around Atlanta when I had to go to Georgia for the SCV reunion, but Atlanta, that needs like a whole makeover because that is getting bad. They attacked our cemetery there. Like, how low of a human being do you have to be to attack a veteran cemetery? The Lion of Atlanta, it's been removed, put in storage. People all want I saw today, they want a pardon or something for what happened in 2020. And I said, absolutely not. No way on the Lord's green earth am I going to give anyone a pardon. After what they did and after how horrible they were to our monuments, not going to happen. Brian says Illinois is bad. I had someone tell me they called it Illinois, and I'm like, it's not Illinois, it's Illinois. Or they'll say Illinois, and that drives me crazy too. Jody says Illinois is a dumpster fire. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Chicago especially. It's that one area of Chicago that ruins the rest of the state. Much like how in New York, it's New York City that ruins the rest of the state. Shane says, too many people have become psy-whipped. Our federal government has dumbed down our education system. It started years ago. That's right. So y'all, I'm a member of the John Birch Society. They've got a fantastic history, and they've always been huge proponents of, holding the elected officials accountable. They started with the idea of reforming education for the better. And that's the problem. The education that they're doing, the curriculum is dumbing down education. The standards have been lowered. And instead, they're reducing critical thinking and they're encouraging indoctrination. So it's pretty much all about memorizing facts, deviant behavior, psychological shaping. They start all this stuff in kindergarten, which is pretty scary, and the CRT. And there's all reinforcers they use. So it's a whole mental mind game that by the time you have a loved one who starts out in kindergarten, all the way up to going to college, by the time that child enters college, they're going to be brainwashed. And that's how you see a lot of them, completely, uninformed on a lot of issues. Some of them might be going through a rough time with certain things, and that's all because of the systemic brainwashing that's going on. Shane says, when you brainwash the people, it becomes yeah, that's right. That's what we're dealing with now. You're getting told how to think. You're getting told what to think instead of how to think critically. And that's been the issue. Jody says, government lied about the South. So this crap going on nowadays doesn't really surprise anyone. No, it doesn't. And I'm not shocked by it. We already saw right when the war between the states was over, the women stepped up big time and they helped. Those women were fighting very hard to get our veterans honored, to get them crosses of honor, to get them graves. Things like that mattered. It actually helped. And unfortunately, we've gotten to a point in our society where we're so far away from that. We're so far away from critical thinking and looking at what's really going on here. Christian says you can break the conditioning, but does the person have the willpower to change? That's the other issue. Almost like how we would use a different term in forensic psychology for rehabilitation, and you would basically see how amenable someone is to treatment. How amenable is a person to, actually being willing to listen, to change. Things like that matter. Shane says when you brainwash the peeps, you control the population. That's right. Same with the narrative. And that's why they have a wonderful museum in New Orleans where it's the Confederate Memorial Hall, and it's absolutely fantastic. I tell people, please support that museum. It teaches the proper narrative. They have new exhibits there. It is the largest collection of Confederate items. Then the next museum is a Confederate museum in Elm Springs, Tennessee. And that's a great museum because it is growing. They've added a lot of new artifacts, and it's really doing a great job at, telling the story of the South and, the causes of the war between the states and all that good stuff. As you know, today, museums, unfortunately, they're not like they were back in the day. Museums, people are now vandalizing masterpieces. You're seeing people going in there, gluing their hands to stuff. Things like that are so unacceptable, and that's the problem. These people in art galleries are getting permission from the higher-ups. The problem as well is a lot of people on museum boards are older. So because of them being older, they're either dying out or they're retiring. And the people that are taking these positions at the museum boards are younger, who are super ridiculous. And they're attacking our masterpieces because they hate beauty. These are beautiful masterpieces that we have from Van Gogh. We had several other ones from Vermeer, things like that. And if people are thinking it's okay to vandalize that beauty, it sends a message that they're attacking artwork for being beautiful when their artwork is not that same level of beauty. And that's the problem. You have to separate the two. And I tell people, if we want to stop this, we got to have one museum for classics and one museum for modern and stop including them in the same museum. Look at the Louvre in France. They do not do a good job at keeping the artworks there. That's part of the problem. The other issue is look at the behavior too. Part of the issue in our society is that parents aren't being parents anymore. So you go into a museum and you'll see children jumping on artifacts, climbing up on like chairs and whatnot. And you're wondering, where are the parents? If I ever acted like that in public, I'd be dragged out of that museum, quicker than a road runner on fire. So things like that are all key to why we're in this situation. Lack of, teaching manners. I can't tell you, when I was in the public education system, my last year there, I was getting cussed at. The students were rude. If I had ever spoken to a teacher the way I was spoken to, I probably would have been grounded for life. We need parents that are actually not afraid to be parents anymore. And that's part of the issue, to be involved. It's just been a long thing. And you're seeing the result of stuff that was in the works for years. The dumbing down of education, that's happened for, at least 40 plus years. Slowly been getting worse and worse. Mr. Bryan says the SCV Museum is awesome. I was there last December. The reason I joined the SCV. That's awesome, man. What was your favorite part about the museum? I was there during the Forrest funeral, and I think my favorite exhibit when I was there was the medical exhibit, because it really put it in perspective what medicine was like back then, and it was pretty darn scary. Amen, Christian. A lot of people would have. Yeah. No, it's pretty sad the way, people lack respect these days. And even like seeing, I remember the one time I went to a funeral, and at the one funeral, there was someone who came in there in a tank top and flip flops. And I'm thinking, if I had ever showed up to a funeral like that, I would have been dragged out and would have been like thrown across the whole yard. We had another woman that was there. She was wearing a pearl necklace, a tank top that was not appropriate. It was like brightly colored too. And then she had like a professional skirt on with boots on, like combat boots. That was the craziest two things I've ever seen at a funeral. But it also shows you that people lack respect these days. All right, y'all. So I'm thinking about probably wrapping this up. Any last questions before I wrap up? I'll give it about 2 minutes or so. I know there's a lag when you're on this platform. I'm still learning the features of this, and I think that at some point I can do presentations, so I think I might show some of my programs in the near future. Brian says, my favorite part of the museum was the Nathan Bedford Forrest jacket, sword, and pistols. I have a replica pistol of Nathan Bedford Forrest. It was a special, commemorative piece that was made by the SCV, and it was absolutely fantastic. It's one of the more treasured items that I have in my little collection. Jody says, thank you. You are welcome, Jody. I truly appreciate it. It's all of y'all that make this possible. So I truly appreciate the support from y'all. I truly appreciate the feedback. Sharing this video it means a lot. Getting involved with Save Arlington. We're all in this together, and we win this with teamwork. We all have to be active. Oh, no worries. Jody says, I was just notified of this live an hour late. It happens. That's been another issue, is the whole shadow banning thing. It makes it difficult. Sometimes it's just after the fact, but all of our episodes, and I tell people don't worry, are always, put up on here. You'll be able to access them at any time. I'm making it a habit to go live, pretty much as possible every single week towards nighttime. Shane says, am I in the SCV, which is the Sons of Confederate Veterans? I am. I am a member of the New Jersey Camp 1505. We are in the process of getting a second camp, and I will be the commander of that. And I'm telling anyone who's from New Jersey who wants to be part of the SCV, consider joining. You might even be in my camp, and I'll be the commander of it. And I run a tight ship. It is a no drama kind of camp. Our whole goal is to be as active as possible, work with our SCV. Work with our UDC chapter, get involved, get people out there and active. And that's my whole purpose of starting the second camp, is I want to inspire people. We might be stuck up north, or what I call Upper Dixie, but guess what? That means that we can still actually, take things back. This is totally on us, and we can do this. Mr. Cristoforo says, yes, thank you. You are welcome, sir. Brian says, you are awesome, bro. Appreciate you. Jesus loves you. God bless. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Justin says, FB warned me for saying Yankees were greedy. That's what I don't understand. See, like, little things like that drives me crazy. Jody says, oh, and where's the Sunday movies, LOL? I would double check. It might be through the Alamo City Guards chat. If they have it on there and they're streaming it on here, it might be on there somewhere. I know we had a little bit of a tech issue, so we didn't get the movies on yesterday. They claimed it was like spam or something. So just kind of, hold out on that. I think it's up there, if I'm not mistaken. It should be. If not, contact us and we'll have someone, reach out and see where they are. All right, y'all. With that being said, y'all have a fantastic week. Have a blessed Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. Make it a productive one. Y'all stay Southern, and Deo Vindice.